Hi, everyone. Welcome to Casual Watch Talk live on a Tuesday. Thanks for everyone that's joined. It was a bit late notice. We weren't sure if we were going to do one, but we managed to get a panel together, a great panel as well. So we just thought we'd have a random chat tonight. Keep those questions coming in the comment section as well. If you've got any questions you want to ask us, we'd be happy to answer them, whether watch related. None of us, well, Patrick is medically trained, but I don't think he's technically allowed to answer medical questions on a live stream. So keep them watch related. Well, Steve, do you want to kick us off with the old wristwatch check then?
Yeah, sure. So wearing one that I picked up last summer. This is a Aquastar. Gosh, the reflection's really bad. Aquastar diver from the 1960s, and found a guy on Instagram selling this thing, and it's in fantastic shape. I think it may have been polished at some point, but it's a really cool piece, and I love vintage divers. So
how old is it? Because it doesn't look vintage at all.
I know. I mean, I would assume it's at least 50 years old, but yeah, I don't know the exact production date. But yes, it's in fantastic shape, and a lot of these, oddly enough, the dials get oxidized, and they get kind of these tropical dials. The ones that are tropicalized are a lot easier to find than the ones that don't have a tropicalized dial. So it's one of the rare instances where if you can find one that doesn't have a badly sun damaged dial, then they're highly sought after.
Oh, that's really cool.
It's not like Rolex where the worse damage, the better it is.
No. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Yeah. Patrick, what are you wearing?
Well, in honor of what we're probably going to talk about today in two parts, I'm wearing my limited edition Zodiac Super Seawolf with the meteorite dial.
Nice.
And, one of the watches that just popped up this week was a pretty cool Zodiac Super Seawolf rainbow, and I thought it was pretty cool, so it inspired me to pull it off the shelf and put it on the wrist.
Awesome. Well, I'm not going to do a watch for my one because I used to keep my watches in a watch roll, and it was sent in by, includes paid promotion, a company called Mirage Luxury Travel, and they asked me whether I wanted to do another watch roll. I'm like, oh, I've already done a watch, I've already reviewed watch roll. I said, have you got anything like a watch box? And they're like, yes, I think we've got something. So let me show you this. They sent me this beast in of a watch box. So yeah, it's got so I'll put my watches in it, and I'm going to review it on the channel, but I'll also do it as part of the State of the Watch collection. So it's got like a thing. It's got part of it's a travel case, and then you've got a little drawer under there with all the watch straps and all that business in there. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So big thanks to Mirage Luxury Travel for their kind lending me this in. I'll do a review. I've shot the intro, but I'm going to do the full review, and I'll talk through all my watches as well when we're on that review as well. So it's not just a pure.
I like that little travel case in the middle of it. That's a good idea.
Yeah, one of the things that's good about them as well. This has turned into an advert, but is that their watch pillows, they have a little slot. So basically, it doesn't. You can just pull it out, and it just stays in the same orientation.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool. And they're the same with their watch rolls. The watch rolls, each individual section, it's basically 3 of those together. In each individual section, you can pull it out, so you haven't got to pull it all the way off the. Because even those expensive Louis Vuitton ones, haven't you? You've got to pull all the watches off the side to get the watch off. So that was my wristwatch check. That was the watch box. I'm wearing my Seiko GMT, but I've got my bootleg Crafter Blue strap on there that I had to attack with a Dremel. So I don't really advertise it on Instagram or anything. I think I might have put one picture on there, but yeah, I actually messaged them saying, "Oh, by the way, your watch strap doesn't fit on the Sumo quartz one," and they're like, "Yeah, we know." And I said, "But I made it fit." And I sent them a picture, and they were like, "Oh, cool." So yeah, it was a lot of Dremel, and then I had to use a bit of the that epoxy compound that where you mix the two colors together to make like the plastic epoxy. But anyway, okay. So we might talk about limited edition watches, but Patrick, you have found a new watch website that I've never heard of before. So I think we should talk about it. It's called wristenthusiast.com.
Wrist Enthusiast, yeah.
Wrist. So why do you like it? What's it about? Who's it from?
I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I remember maybe a month or two ago is when it sort of popped its head in my my Instagram feed, and I pretty much they kind of do clickbaity titles with all this like best this or the top 20, but they're still entertaining. And this is the one that I said motivated me because I just saw the Zodiac, even though it's pretty amazing because it just got released like 3 days ago.
Yeah.
So they did a pretty quick job of adding it to the list. But they kind of come up with what are the best blue watches, what are the best green watches, and they just seem to drop a lot of articles all the time. And what I like about them is they're not really biased. They don't have an agenda. They're really just kind of advertising new watches that have come out. And that's ever since the disappearance of Watchville, any company or any website that pretty much helps me learn about new models, I'm all for. And I think when I liked one of their videos a long time ago, one of the guys actually sent me a quick text and said hey, thanks for that. And I found out they're a 2-partner team, and one of them was in Tampa. So I thought that was kind of neat because obviously that's where I live. So it was just an interesting coincidence that they're kind of a somewhat local group. I don't think they're part of Red Bar Tampa or any of the local things, but maybe at some point we'll collab or something. Who knows? But pretty neat.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, that Christopher Ward. Shout out to Christopher Ward. Shout out to the Zodiac team, Mike at Zodiac. Yeah, this looks pretty cool, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'd never heard of this before, but it looks like they've got some interesting. Green watches.
I knew you'd like the green one. So.
Oh yeah. That's
Patrick. I have something to add in. Mm-hmm. So I was also a very heavy Watchville user, so both on my desktop and on my phone, and so I was incredibly sad when that got sunsetted by Hodinkee. I don't know why.
Yeah, do you want to explain? Sorry, Steve. Do you want to explain what it was for people that don't know? Because I don't think a lot of people actually knew it, did they?
So I guess the easiest way to describe it is it's really like a compiler of all these different watch blogs. And especially you think about Watches and Wonders or other big events where, all these different independent watch bloggers are there, covering different models. I mean, there are posts every minute almost of new watches that are coming out. And it may be stuff that Hodinkee isn't going to cover for another week or 2 weeks, or Worn & Wound may not cover it for 3 weeks, something like that. So, you're getting all these different resources covering essentially the same content, but you'll get, different opinions and different kinds of articles. And so it was fantastic. So I struggle with the same thing. I did find a replacement for it though. And I was curious to know if you have looked at this as well. It's called Watchicity.
Yep, I'm on it.
ICITY.
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay.
Because you're right. It's Watchville was my favorite for exactly what you just said. I think when I got my Grand Seiko SBGY 009, I found out about it because I was clicking around, and all of a sudden on Watchville, they're like, "Oh, new release!" Because as you said, Grand Seiko releases, sometimes they get big press, and sometimes you never hear about them. Like some titanium Grand Seiko got released last week, and I've seen 0 posts of it anywhere. But it was kind of a cool watch, and thanks to Watchicity, I saw it. But if I didn't have one of those accumulators, I'd probably miss it. And I said I think Watchville was the best, but I'll take second fiddle any day because it's better than nothing.
Because it was an app, was it? Watchville was an app.
You could do it both ways. I never actually downloaded the app. I just used the web page, but it was my start screen on my homepage on my internet. So pretty much anytime I Googled anything, that came up first, and I'd be like, "Ooh, what's new?" And I said, I miss it.
Yeah. First question coming in. Robert Wood is saying, "Hey Steve, I'm in Austin. How do I get involved in Red Bar Austin?"
Yes, so I just sent a message. Hopefully it came through. But yes, there's an Instagram called Red Bar ATX on Instagram, and you can send them a message and kind of go through the process of becoming a member. And anyone else who's interested in joining Red Bar, I'm not officially affiliated with them anymore or get paid or anything like this. But if you are interested in joining your local Red Bar, just look for them on Instagram. They have their own page generally, and you can DM them and join their events, and they're free to join, and you can meet all sorts of collectors and see all sorts of watches that you only get to see in pictures and on Watchicity. So yeah, it's a really cool group to join. So anyone who's interested, I'd highly recommend it.
Cool. Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah, I don't think there's a Red Bar in Tampa, is there, Patrick?
Yeah, there's actually the Mayor's Jewelers is having a big get together this Friday. Actually, they're having I guess Watches of Switzerland, which is owns Mayors or part of Mayors. I guess they also have another company called Analog Shift, which I guess is like a pre-owned.
Yeah, it's a website, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, so that is, I guess, coming together. And so they're having a Mayors / Analog Shift super watch party on Friday in Tampa. And I've wrangled up about 17 people from the Red Bar crew to come to us. So, just using the Red Bar platform, I'm advertising for it and just saying, hey, let's all go see what watches they have, because it'll be different from what they usually have. But
yeah, Analog Shift always has like rare ones, and I love it as a YouTuber, because if you're reviewing like a rare watch, they take amazing photos. So I always sometimes pinch some of their photos, because they'll take some really artsy ones. This is where I first saw that Steve, that Abercrombie and Fitch watch. They had one for sale.
Yep. Yeah, they have good stuff. You can tell just by looking at the different dealers online who has the good stuff and who doesn't. So yeah, Analog Shift, they definitely have some real high-end and unusual pieces available for sale.
Yeah I've never bought from them, but it's one that I always peruse, because they do have an interesting collection. As you've mentioned, they can curate some really interesting watches that you don't often find in other places.
I'd never heard of it, so you guys are making the Friday more exciting for me, knowing that they're all
dangerous for
some pretty good things.
Yeah. Eric Mack saying, I've tried to reach out to Red Bar Philadelphia, got no response at least yet. Could you help me out, Steve? You said you're not affiliated with it.
Well, I'm not affiliated with that chapter, but yeah, I'm sure. Gosh, I don't know. Well, I'll maybe I can put my Instagram handle in the chat, and you can message me and I can reach out to them. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Eric, if you want to do that, or put your Instagram in the chat.
Yeah, put yours in there, and then I can look you up.
Absolutely. Another interesting thing that I saw online was the Hodinkee, or Ben at Hodinkee, did an interview with Kermit the Frog, right? And I don't know. I mean, far from me to, I'm sure there is obviously only one Kermit the Frog, but this Kermit the Frog, his accent sounded slightly like a 50-year-old New York cabbie. So it's not the familiar. So maybe Kermit the Frog is, maybe he's had a bit of a chest infection, or he smokes a lot, or he's suddenly moved to New York and is assimilating the accent. But yeah, it was quite interesting. Ben showed a little. He tries with the personality, doesn't he? So he tried a little bit of personality on there. It's quite funny. You should watch it. It is quite funny, but I can't get over the fact that Kermit the Frog's accent is slightly, perhaps not.
Right. Can you play it, or would you get in trouble?
I wonder if I can play it. Let me see if. Hang on. Can you hear that?
No.
Okay, hang on. I think there is a way.
I can't hear it, but so do I want to put a fake New York accent over Kermit the Frog now.
Hang on. There must be a way of me doing this, of sharing the audio, because there is people that, or unless I have to download the video and then play it. But there should be a way, shouldn't there? I'll leave the link in the chat here so that everybody can actually play along at home. But yeah, it's actually quite funny, the accent. Yeah, definitely got to listen to it. But let me see settings. Hang on. Is there a way?
I'm going to say, no, I haven't heard of this either. So I have not heard the New York style Kermit the Frog.
If I don't know if anybody knows, but let me know if anybody knows of a way of playing the audio through the StreamYard I'm using. Then let me know, and maybe we'll come back to it in a bit.
Yeah. So I'm taking a guess. Was he pimping the new Oris collection?
Yes. So he kind of plays around. It was predominantly to pimp the new Oris collection, but he kind of alluded to the fact that there's the Rolex, but they didn't mention the Rolex by name. He just said that you're a very important person in the watch industry, and then Kermit Frog made a joke about the fact that he can't wear a watch because he's got small wrists and so on. But yeah, it's worth checking it out. It's mildly amusing, we'll say. Okay, so we wanted to have a little chat about limited edition watches, and we'll wait and see if there's any more questions that come through. So, Steve, your premise was you were thinking, are they still a thing, or should they still be a thing?
Yeah, well, I guess, it's just something that I've noticed, and I'm sure you all have noticed the same thing. It's like the rise of limited editions, and it seems like 10 years ago, this was not really a thing. I mean, maybe it was to some extent, like especially with, like some of the limited edition Speedmasters, but there was more of like, this is commemorating a special event, right? And we're going to have this special, Apollo 8, Speedmaster that we're going to have for sale for a short amount of time, and then it's going to be gone. But now it's like everything is a limited edition. And at least for me, I find it to be a little bit frustrating because you have to be available pretty much at all times in order to get any sort of limited edition watch that you want, because otherwise it will sell out, and if you can't get it, you have to pay some sort of a markup from a retailer. It seems like everyone is just kind of going that route these days, and I guess my question for you all is this the future of watch collecting? These kind of short run limited editions, or is this just a fad?
Yeah. I think it's going to be a thing forever. I don't know. I can't see. I mean, I think that now so many companies can see that they can get away with it, can't they? That they do it. I mean, but having said that, I mean, I don't know whether, I know certainly G-Shock with the Bamford one, that they got certainly shocked by it, didn't they? And that Wu-Tang Clan one that I ended up bidding on, actually, they did like a lottery style system for that, where it was limited edition, but you had to enter a lottery in order to buy it. It wasn't, it didn't drop at a specific time. In fact, I was watching a video on this the other day about Supreme. There was a YouTube video about the clothing brand Supreme and how they used to do the drops, and it just caused a whole frenzy. And they actually stopped doing it or scaled it down a lot, because every Thursday they would drop in, a new collection in New York, and the queues ended up getting longer and longer and longer. But then it actually got to be where it was quite dangerous. They had to call police and stuff. So I wonder whether the drops in the boutiques might end, but I can't see online. Although Hodinkee don't do as many as they used to, do they? They went through a real phase of doing like one a month, didn't they? Almost at one time.
Yeah. Well, I'll throw my 2 cents in that I think it's the way that brands are trying to mimic the Rolex model without mimicking the Rolex model. And so if you're taking your Submariner, which in no way is limited, there's millions of them, but you're limiting how many can get out into the populace, you make the demand go up. And the example that I'm kind of regretting, but maybe I'm not regretting a limited edition, was that Alan Silverstein, Bell and Ross collaboration they did, where they only made 50 regular and they made 50 in like a box set. So, there's a total of 100 of them. And, how many people are out there looking for a ceramic Bell and Ross diver? Not very many people. And, but you make it an Alan Silverstein, which once again, he's kind of kitschy. Sometimes people like him, sometimes people hate him, but you make a limited edition of it. And guess what? You just sold all your watches. And so for that reason, I think limited editions will never die. I'm going to make fun of a brand I love. Grand Seiko, though, I think is guilty of making limited editions in a different vein. And that's where they just make limited editions that really aren't that limited. And I mean, like the one I bought, it was 1,500. That's not limited. That's a lot of watches. And, you know, eventually that means in 5 years, maybe they'll all sell out and you can't buy it then. But that kind of limited edition, like, I'm not disappointed that they're there, because at the end of the day, you'll know your watch is more limited than, let's say, the Submariner. But I do think that's a little overplayed. I like when limited editions are actually a smaller number. And like, for example, 182. So, you know, it's a number that, you know, there really aren't that many out there. So it really kind of is limited. When they get into the 500, that's borderline 1,000. It's not that limited. And, you know, sometimes they even make these like 2,000 plus ones, and that's just silly. But
yeah,
but I guess I just keep going back to, like, ultimately, what does a limited edition mean to me? If there's 182 of something or 300 of something, does it really make it valuable? Like, you know, is it really going to be something that in 5 years from now people are still going to want? Or are they just going to be on to whatever the next limited edition is? And we're buying all these things that, like, you know, we only perceive as having value now, but there's going to be X number of limited editions in the future. And it's like, you know, where does it end?
Yeah, somebody's asked a question. So Bruno's asked, for the panel, what do we think the difference is between limited edition and a special edition? Is there a difference, or is it just wording?
My evil laugh will tell you that I just think it's wording, but it's mostly making a limited edition with an excuse to make a limited edition. And so I think every company exists because of the Rolex model, wants to make their watches more exclusive, even if they're not that exclusive. And so for them to then make a limited edition, but to call it, you know, the 60th anniversary or this, you know, it sounds better than just saying, hey, we made a limited edition because we want to make more money.
Yeah. Isn't it fun? I always think about this with Rolex, where we don't know this for a fact, but assuming that some watch companies want to be as big as Rolex, like Omega, for example, assuming they wanted to take that top position, but nobody plays by their playbook, do they? Because Rolex actually don't ever say that anything is limited edition, do they? I can't think of a numbered limited edition. They're like, hey, it's sort of this thing where it's like, hey, this is the watch. You may or may not be able to get it, and we might discontinue it in a year. But they won't say, oh, there is only 500 of these in the world or whatever. Nobody ever plays by that playbook, do they? They try all these weird things, whereas Rolex is very sort of, I mean, even with the sort of slightly out there ones at Watches and Wonders, it was nothing like outrageous, was it? It wasn't like a Tourbillon or something like that. They just changed the date wheel to be emojis. And you always think about, like, nobody's really playing them at their own game, I don't think. You know, so maybe these limited editions are sort of forcing, because that's the thing in you know, I was in sales for a long time, and it's hard to sell something where there's no compelling event, they call it. If anybody's in sales, it probably you need a compelling event, like a reason for a customer to buy something. And usually the compelling event can be, hey, the contract's running out for the next thing. Hey, you've got to switch now. You're either stuck with your current provider, or the Hotel California, I call it. You can check out anytime, but you can never leave, where you're like locked into your current provider. So yeah, that's a compelling event. So there's like there's a deadline. But other than that, like, you have to create your own compelling event. Like, you have to say, okay, well, coming to the end of the month, I might be able to give you a little cheeky discount or something. Or if you make a decision now, you're kind of adding your own compelling event to it, aren't you? So I think these limited editions are adding a compelling event for something that maybe you would just be like, okay, well, I like it, but I'll just save up for it and get it when I can get it, type of thing. Probably just saying the same thing. We've got some questions coming through, but I think I might have got my Kermit audio to play. So should we try it one more time? Let me
Sure.
Let me see if it'll play. Oh, let me see if I can play it.
Might even look good on a watch.
I think it would.
Yeah.
So tell me, if you don't wear watches, how do you tell the time?
Yeah, we frogs have developed a natural circadian rhythm, and it keeps our body clock humming smoothly day in and day out. And it's kind of like having your own little internal watch. It's pretty neat, but it does make it kind of redundant to have a watch collection. So
you've got kind of your own internal watch collection.
There you go. So what do we think of Kermit's voice?
That is not the Kermit from my childhood.
Bad.
Yeah, I mean, at least Ben's a little bit more animated, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was an interesting one, and of course they do obviously get on to the star of the show, available in the Hodinkee store. The where is it? It's in there somewhere. They get onto the Oris, of course. But yeah, I thought it was pretty funny that they did that, I suppose. And the comments in the comment section are very sort of self-congratulatory. There's a few people like, "Oh, this isn't Kermit's real voice." So Pepe it's asking, does Kermit get high if he licks himself? I don't know. No, I don't think we're qualified to.
Wrong kind of frog. Wrong kind of frog.
I like the next comment down about Canal Street, Kermit the Frog. Perfect.
With the New York accent.
Canal Street in New York City, where you can buy any replica you want. Very nice.
I actually met somebody. I posted it in we have a chat group, and I posted in there the Canal Street tag that one of my colleagues has got. And when it has it's a tag chronograph, but when you press the buttons, it just advances advances the chronograph one click. So they actually went to the effort of making the chronograph buttons do something instead of you just clicking them and they're just stuck on, but it just advances it forwards. Hilarious. But yeah, because I looked at his watch. He's like, "Oh, do you like my watch?" I'm like, "It's a fake tag, isn't it?" He's like, "Yeah, it's a fake tag." And I was like, "You could actually afford a tag. Do you know what I mean? You could buy it. You can get a Formula One used for, a new issue of Formula One used for probably $800. But anyway, okay, so yeah, so Jack's saying a special edition isn't handcuffed to a specific number, so the maker can shrink or expand the production in response to demand. That's a good point, because G-Shock recently did that with the last Hodinkee John Mayer collab, the blue one. They actually released. I got an email and they released a whole new batch of them, like months later. I mean, they sold out straight away, but they released a new batch of them. So maybe they're getting a little bit more clever like that. It might be interesting to see if they re-release the Wu-Tang Clan one. But yeah,
because similar to the Omega Snoopy, that's like a special edition too, where they kind of loosely said maybe about 1,500 a year, but there's, as you said, they could completely lie and put out 2,500 or 5,000, and no one would know the difference. So that kind of goes along with that theory.
Well, is the Moon Swatch, is that a special edition or no?
I guess that Moon,
people are buying it like it's a limited edition.
Yeah, I saw the video of the one release of the Moon Gold hand version, where I guess everyone who was in the line at the store did get one though. So at least they had it available for one day, but they brought a truck of 1,000 of them or whatever. So it's not like you walked in the store and they're like, "We have 10," which of course, leads to chaos. But I don't know if this is true, so don't quote me on the internet. But I read something because my upcoming video this week's about the IWC Ingenieur and the hate it's getting for being too expensive. But someone posted, kind of going along with what we're talking about, that they've read claims that they're only going to slow roll out about 200 in each color a year. Which, kind of playing with what we're talking about, that would increase its demand, even if the demand for it isn't so high, because you've kind of made it into a special / limited edition, and then people who really want it will pay more for it. So, it's probably a genius idea, but it means normal humans won't be able to get themselves an Ingenieur.
Well, isn't that interesting? Because what if it really takes off? I mean, aren't they shooting themselves in the foot? It's almost like they're expecting. Maybe they are. Maybe they did the market research and they're like, "Look, we're probably only going to sell 200 of these," and that's why they've bumped the price up a bit. But I wonder if they keep some in reserve just in case, some reserve stock, because they're not gonna, they don't expire, do they, watches? So they could keep a few.
Yeah, well, on the which kind of makes me second guess. I mean, I still have my name down at my AD, even though I don't know if it's even going to my AD eventually, because I think right now it's only boutique only. But on the About F and Time podcast, they talked to I guess it's the CEO of the company, and he flat out said, yes, more models are coming. And so, it's not going to be the only variation. He said different sizes. I mean, it sounds like they're similar to the Royal Oak. They're going to open up the gauntlet of new Ingenieur types. And so maybe it's best to even wait a year or two and see what, new releases come out, because it might have better features even.
Yeah. That is interesting, isn't it? Somebody at work, to pivot slightly, but somebody at work, basically, he was toying with selling his Belcanto, and the thing is, he said, "Oh, I've asked $10,000 for it," but he had an interested buyer. He's not selling it on Chrono. He actually he actually had a local person interested in it. He went to his local watch guy and said, "Hey, have you got anybody interested in this Christopher Ward, Matt at work?" And somebody said, "Oh, I'm interested." I said, "Oh, I'll do it for 7,500." And the guy's thinking about it, and I was like, "Oh," I said to him, "I said, wow, that's interesting, isn't it? That's 7,500 for that Christopher Ward. That's 4,000 over retail or whatever, or just less." And I went on Chrono, and there's about 5 or 6 of them for over $10,000. He got the blue dial, the Aqua or whatever it was, the Azuro Blue or whatever it was.
Yeah,
called.
the first runs probably is the most sought after, just for that reason.
Yeah, it's fascinating, that, isn't it? That I wonder whether Christopher Ward are going to try and parlay that, because that's almost reward. They're not getting the money, Christopher Ward, but it is almost giving. It's almost rewarding the fact that they did it as limited edition. Although Mike did say that actually they couldn't make any more. Like they were restricted by how many they could make.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'm sure they could do the blue dial again. But
yeah, but that's what's really, really interesting about either the real production slowing production, or whether, because we don't know anything about Rolex, if it's them faking it or whatever everyone wants to believe. I mean, I just think they make a lot. They're just all being bought.
Yeah,
but
I do.
The reality is, no matter what the reason is, it's supply and demand. And if it brings down the supply, guess what? The demand goes up. And the Belcanto, that's not a lot of watches for such a great complication, for such a great price. I mean, I wonder if my friends might not give us the full truth on it, but I wonder if they were as shocked as I think the internet was of how successful that watch was, because I mean it blew up.
Yeah, it's that was kind of like lightning in a bottle for them, wasn't it? And I actually said to him at work, even though I'm a Christopher Ward fan, I was like, if I had that watch and somebody offered me 7,500 for it, I'd sell it. Like, I wouldn't. Sorry, Mike France, if you're watching this. But, do you know what I mean? I wouldn't think twice about it, because even though it's a great watch and I really like it, it's part of the reason it was so good is because it was an affordable price, wasn't it? Whereas if you're getting near $10,000, you wonder whether whether there would be another time in history that it would be that expensive without hanging on to it for a long time.
And to use the analogy that's almost the exact same, it would be the Tiffany Blue OP. I mean, It's a beautiful watch. I mean, I would love to have one. If you bought that for $6,000 and then you go on Chrono and they're readily selling for $30,000, I mean, I can't keep that watch for $30,000, because there's so many better watches I would buy for $30,000 than that. And it's not a diss on Rolex. It's an awesome watch. It's just that price is just so absurd. It's like houses. People have those make me sell it offers that you see on like Zillow, and they just put their property up and they put a ridiculous offer on there, and they're just saying, make me move. And if someone will buy it for that, hey, time to buy a new house.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Actually, because you said Tiffany, James Duffy, he just bought a Tiffany watch, and I didn't realize this because my wife really likes going in there and having a look around in Tiffany's, and it's also easy because she really likes the jewelry in there. So if I'm buying her a present, like a Christmas present or something, they obviously have a sliding scale, don't they? Quite affordable stuff to expensive stuff. But I was actually looking at the Tiffany watches, and they do make some interesting watches. But what I didn't realize is they still collab with Patek Philippe. Like I didn't know. I thought that they basically didn't do collabs anymore because very famously they did Rolex, didn't they? And I think a few others. I think there was even Nautiluses was there that were Tiffany branded, but they still do I don't know how easy they are to get, but you can still get a dual branded. I think they're all women's watches, aren't they? Ladies' watches. Although there's a chronograph that might be sort of more males. But yeah, I never realized that they still co-branded them. I suppose this is unisex 38 mil.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I think they're really hard to get.
Yeah. Yeah, but you never hear anybody talking. You always hear them talking about Tiffany Rolexes, but I've never heard anyone talking about a dual branded Patek. But the men's watches, I don't know which one you've got, James. Let me know. But they're not bad looking actually. I'm not crazy about these side-on ones, but this one's okay. I think it must be an ETA movement. It looks like an ETA from the back, but yeah, looks quite interesting. That's their own branded. I don't know who makes them for them. Mm. Actually, somebody mentioned it on the show the other day. Who actually makes them for them? But yeah, there you
Sam,
go.
I have a question to go back to the previous topic about Patrick. You mentioned about the IWC engineer. So you put down your interest on this watch. Okay. I saw a video, I think maybe it was on the Time Teller, maybe yesterday or the day before. Someone has done a comparison between this watch and the Baume & Mercier Riviera, really sort of illustrating that these two watches are very similar, yet there's a stark difference in terms of price. I think the Riviera is maybe somewhere around 3,000 or 4,000, and the IWC is like 14,000, somewhere in that range. Seeing that information, I don't know if you've seen the video or not, but seeing that, does that change your thought or feeling on putting money down on this watch?
There's two parts. One, thank you for wonderful clickbait for why you should watch my video this week, because I'm going to make a lot of people angry. And that's okay, because kind of the premise of that is all watch prices are completely made up, and all watch prices are completely overpriced for what they are. And whether you're paying for a Rolex brand or an IWC brand versus a Baume & Mercier brand, you're just paying for brand. I mean, it's no different than buying a Tiffany bracelet that's sterling silver. That bracelet costs $5 to make, yet they're going to sell it to you for $200. You're buying a brand name. And a lot of us don't like to think about that when we talk about our luxury products and the things right behind us. But I know every watch I own is overpriced, and I'm okay with that because I know what I bought. I either bought a brand I liked, I bought a design I liked, I bought a material I liked. I'm comfortable with my overspending. There's some people out there, though, who I don't think are going to swallow that red pill so happily because they, for some reason, think that overpriced things are better than other things. I don't know all the ins and outs about the Baume & Mercier. I mean, I know the finishing of the case isn't as good, but, and I don't know if that's machine finishing or not, because then that would bump up the price. But generally speaking, the movement that's in that IWC is a pretty heavily modified base of an ETA movement over years. And because of that, it really is their own, I think it's like Val Fourier's design. And the Baume & Mercier uses a very similar movement. I don't know if it's got the same 5-day power reserve. I don't know if it's got the same silicon escapement that the IWC has. But, it definitely is a very similar watch. And yes, the IWC is much more expensive. But it's an IWC, It's not a Baume & Mercier. So that's kind of the step one of it might be similar, but it's different enough that, I think IWC with a Genta design deserves quasi Genta pricing, which, if we all go back to our history books, when the Royal Oak was released, they fakely inflated the price and made it more expensive than a gold watch. They did that to better their brand, and dear God, it worked. And now we're giving IWC a lot of flack for kind of doing the same thing, trying to step up with a treasure of design, whether you like it or not. It's by far the cheapest true Genta design there is. And, is it expensive? Yes, they're all expensive. Do I think it's overpriced? I think it's decently fair.
So does the value part ever factor in at all when you're buying something?
I think about it. When I'm buying watches, I think about value, but also I think about I suppose Peter that's Pete McConville Watches, he did that thing, didn't he, about all the different types of watch collectors, and I think I fitted into the accountant category, where I do think about the price, but also I think about the, does it retain its value? I mean, like I wouldn't, I bought a Datejust, and part of it was I like the design, but the other part of it is like, hey, I could probably, if I ever fell out of love with it, I'm not going to take a bath on it. And part of the reason I when the Speedmasters went high, I actually sold my Speedmaster, because even though I'd had it for 10, 11 years, and also I'd had it serviced, and I knew it would never look as good as it does then, and I was kind of like maximizing me. So I do think about, I do think about that actually. I would, at the IWC, I don't know. I think it's I think for me, I think about resale value, but also there's layers, isn't there, of ladders where you're like, okay, well now I'm on the ladder of spending $5,000. Oh, there's actually a lot of other stuff in that category. Oh, now I'm on the rung of like, now I'm at $8,000. Now I'm at $9,000, and there's other watches that kind of catch your eye in that price bracket, isn't it? And I think $11,000 is, although I think the Yachtmaster at 14,000 is, I was kind of doing the sums in my mind, and arguably the Yachtmaster has got less engineering.
That's in my video too. That everyone's jumping at the bit to buy a $15,000 titanium Yachtmaster, but you make a $15,000, IWC Ingenieur, and they're like, it's a completely different ballpark.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because Rolex is, I don't know whether I'd say this about Rolex, but I always remember Agent at Park and Jack made an excellent comment about Hublot, saying that price was a feature of the watch, as in they're expensive because the people who buy them want you to know that they're wearing expensive, an expensive watch. So it's actually a part of the sales thing. It's like, hey, this is expensive, but people are going to know that you bought an expensive watch. Whereas Rolex is, yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? It's how do you? Because I think the Explorer at $12,000 is not a bad deal. I think the Submariners are what are they now? They're about 10 or 11, aren't they?
Yeah, they're 11.
Yeah, they're 11, and I don't know. It's a weird one, isn't it?
Here's kind of where I would, let's say, balance the two pieces. You could buy a Rolex, well, if you can buy it, but you can buy a Rolex Submariner, which is never touched by a human hand, barely. Besides maybe a couple pieces of putting hands on, if that's not computer done, because there's no machine, there's no hand finishing, there's no, actual love put into this watch. It's made by machines. And, the movement until just recently was a 20-year-old movement. They've never changed it. Same thing with the Daytona. What is an ETA? It's a 20 to 30-year-old movement that hasn't changed. Why? Because they're both reliable and great. So whether it's a in-house movement or an not in-house movement, I think you're lying to yourself if you're justifying that movement and that watch are worth the value, because yes, it retains value, so you can sell it back. But I mean, if you were to hold up, a Baume & Mercier, and a Rolex, and you really looked at them by their bits and pieces, to a person who didn't know brands, not very many people would be like, "Ooh, yes, that's 3 times the price," but it is. And that's as I said, a bitter pill that I don't think a lot of people want to accept. They just want to really think that their Rolex is that much better, and I don't think it is.
Well, it's
and,
the whole
like
it's the whole mystery. It's the Rolex is the whole mystery, isn't it? As well, it's like, hey, you actually can't get this from you. Cannot get this from somewhere else. Whereas IWC is like, hey, it's a little bit cheekily. ETA, they've zhuzhed it up a little bit. I mean, the Daytona used to be a Zenith and a other movement, didn't it? But you can't get the Rolex movement. It's not like you're saying, oh well, I could get a Hamilton with an ETA movement in it that's been modified and so on, and it's $2,000, or I could get an IWC that has, hey, almost the same movement in, maybe a similar finishing. Bremont as well, ETAs that they've slightly refinished. And is the refinishing just adding visual appeal to it, or is actually the functionality of it? Because you could argue, hey, Hamilton's actually adding different barrels and all of that kind of stuff into the ETA.
Well, the IWC, they completely are. So the IWC movement, I mean, it's not an ETA anymore. And if you go to WatchBase, it'll actually even say, this is not an ETA anymore. It's more parts, it's different sizes. It will not fit into where an ETA fits. Yes, the skeleton, the architecture of the original movement was based on a 2892, but it's now completely different. It's got a 5-day power reserve, 120 hours, better than Rolex. It's got a silicone escapement, better than Rolex. It's got a lot of things that, are higher end than what we're kind of calling the king. And,
well, yeah, I mean, and Omega, of course, have probably the best. The coaxial is probably the best, arguably, in terms of, over perhaps spring drive is the most accurate, isn't it? But you would argue that coaxial is probably the best.
But to Rolex's defense, they just came out with the Chronergy escapement, which is better. So, I mean, it took them long enough, but,
I think mine has the Chronergy escapement in it. Does my date just have that in it?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know much about Datejusts, but I mean, that's an upgrade, and they're Rolex is tried and true, and they take a long time. I mean, the Daytona just got its overhaul after 20 years, and and it's not even that much of an overhaul, but they don't need to, and so they're upping their game, they're bettering their product, but they're not changing the world. And going back to an analogy of using other people's movements, the first Royal Oak, it used a JLC. They only switched in-house about 5 years ago. So I mean, for 20 plus years of the Royal Oak, where everyone's like, oh, AP, all they did was file down a movement and polish it. Like they didn't, or I mean the bracelet, they didn't even make the movement. Yet that watch costs 30 grand. And but you're not going to find a person in the world who talks bad about AP, except for this guy.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because even in my homage video that I recently did, the copy, copy versus homage, I mentioned about Rolex being, they're expensive, but if you can sell it in 5 years' time for, say you bought it for $10,000 and suddenly you can then sell it for $15,000 or whatever. I mean, presume you got a sports model that might be on a conservative. Is that an expensive way of buying is that an expensive item, or is it a cheap way of making $5,000? It's
true. The question that I don't know, because I haven't done enough research on it, but I am very interested, is when does a Rolex watch lose its profitability or even its sustainability? Because if you go look at all these old Cokes that are out there, they're not expensive, and that's where they kind of at some point drop off. I mean, I put my name on the list for the green Sky Dweller because I think the green is now the new best color, and I will take advantage of Rolex price holding because I've got the black Sky Dweller, and when I get the green, I will sell the black, and I will maybe make a couple $1,000, or best case or worst case scenario, I break even. But I don't care because I'm using it to buy the green one. But the idea is, when when do you cross the line when that starts to not hold its value? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? How old is a Rolex when it's not worth what it's worth now? Because most of the gray market stuff we see is within 3 to 5 years. And after that, I think it probably starts to decline.
Well, that's the mystery. That's the other mystery of Rolex, isn't it? Because you could have bought a Paul Newman back in the day when I don't. Maybe it's a myth that they weren't popular, but they say that, don't they? That it wasn't actually that popular a colorway back in the day, but somebody just kept hold of it, and then suddenly, hey, you sat on, 40 years later, or 40 or 50 years later, you sat on a watch that you paid $2,000 for, now being worth upwards of $100,000, in good condition, or 200. I reviewed one on the channel, it was $200,000. Paul Newman hadn't even touched it. So himself. And in fact, Bill Kay made an interesting point about Baume & Mercier, is that they don't retain their value. But you hear this a lot, don't you? Does anybody know what it is about Baume & Mercier that either doesn't? You don't get many I don't know anybody that owns one, unless you guys do. Unless you guys own them, and I don't know people talking about them, because obviously people are sharing watches all the time, aren't they? But you do hear that they lose their value. So does anybody know why they've never really?
I mean, the only thing I know about the brand is that they're very popular in Asia, and similar to Seiko way back when, when it was very popular in Asia, maybe it'll come across the sea, and someday we'll all be, man, you remember those Baume & Merciers, and we'll be kicking ourselves in the pants. But right now, it's just not an overly popular American brand, and I don't know why.
I have always interpreted Baume & Mercier as trendy. I don't want to say the term fashion watches. They're not fashion watches, but they're very trendy. They look at a lot of they're kind of whimsical and have a lot of like contemporary elements. And they're also kind of positioned as like an entry-level luxury timepiece as well. And so I just don't think there's a lot of interest there from collectors, because, that's the way that the brand is positioned. It's not really designed for collectors.
Yeah, like that one you just pulled up, Sam. Yeah, that was the definition of trendy.
Yeah,
I don't even know what they were.
Very trendy. I don't even know
what they were trying to trend, but
yeah, they look good for now. They'll probably be in fashion for another few years, and then they'll come out with another line that looks nothing like what they have out right now. And yeah, it's just to me, it's just stuff that collectors just have no interest in. It's like it's almost like a fashion brand, but they're not fashion brand watches. They're just trendy, contemporary timepieces.
Yeah. Because would you say Frederique Constant is similar? I mean, then they're not similar in terms of they're like fashionable, but they also don't, even though they're very good watches, they don't often get a lot of love from collectors, do they? I mean, I know they did that Red Bar limited edition, didn't they? But
yeah, I guess in a sense they kind of are, maybe at a slightly cheaper price point than many of the Baume & Mercier pieces, but I don't know. I can never get over the fact that they use Constant in their name. It's just one of those things. It's like, in a way, it's kind of trying to be something that it isn't, and I hate to say that, because they have some really fantastic designs that I think are really cool, and they seem like they're well made. But
the name on the dial means a lot. I mean, I was biting my tongue when I bought my Formex, because I don't like reading the word Formex on the dial, just because it's just not a pretty name, but the watch is pretty and the price is good. So I said,
Rolex rolls off the tongue, right? So Formex bad, Rolex good.
Well, yeah, but Formex could be a quick drying cement, couldn't it, or something?
Yeah, yeah, but same idea. You're right, Frederique Constant. When I say the name, like, I don't really care for it, and I don't really care for Baume & Mercier, and I don't really care for Audemars Piguet. Like, that's an ugly name, so that doesn't make me want to buy your watch.
Yeah, but AP sounds hip though, doesn't it?
AP's good.
AP's good, yeah. Or the Jaeger LeCoultre instead of Jaeger LeCoultre.
Yeah, and I like that name better. So I mean, I think Jaeger LeCoultre is a nice one, and even Patek Philippe, just with the 2 P's, it has a good ring to it. So and of course that's all public opinion or personal opinion, but the name I do think is important, and I've never really cared for the Frederic Constant name.
Yeah.
Well, the association is with Vacheron, right? So you look at Vacheron Constantin and Frederic Constant, and you see that similarity in the name. And I think that was very much intentional from their part, is using that name to either kind of fool people or to kind of create this affiliation, even though it doesn't exist. And I think it's a little, I don't know, it's not as above the table as I would like to see, but that's just me.
Yeah. Well, what about Gerard Perregaux? You're one of your favorites, Patrick. What about that for a name?
I don't like the name. So similarly, GP, good. Gerard Perregaux, too many words. But I'm getting over my my hatred for bad watch brand names and just buying the watch if I like the watch. But James just posted a couple, which I don't think he meant to post it for this reason, but those are all great names. Like, I love the name Tissot. I love the name Otto. I love the name Mito. Like, those are good watch brand names. Their watches may or may not be so good, but I like all their names. Yeah, I mean, but Rado could be Rado could be like a washing up powder, couldn't it? And Mido is could be a cartoon dog. It's quite. So I think the equation is keep your name around 5 characters, which is the Rolex model, and something short and sweet. Except for Zelos, you and that big Z, that puts me off. The name Zelos is bad, but I don't like the big. I don't like that. That's a great example. I actually don't like the Zelos logo. That's why I don't. I don't like the brand that much, because I don't like the, they make dodgy watches, don't they? But I think Invicta is actually quite a good name for a. It's a good name. It's a good name. It really is. Yeah, because it's kind of masculine and commanding, isn't it? And they did used to make actual watches back in the day, didn't they? They were the first. I was reading something when I was researching a Pro Diver video that they were they used to show at Baselworld and stuff like that back when they were a Swiss brand before they were bought by the US. They were bought by a US investment company, I think, and then they actually started. So they do make some watches in Switzerland, but. Back in the day, James is knocking it out of the park today with comments. His Christopher Ward comment there is great if you pull that one up. What's this? I confess I would not have pre-ordered a Belcanto if it had the CW name or logo on the dial. I think Mike was very aware of that when I interviewed him actually about it. I think he might have even mentioned that it's they wanted to show off. I mean, from memory, I think the way that he was saying it was, they wanted to show off what they could do, and so they didn't put the name on the dial. So it was close to actually, did you realize this was a Christopher Ward? The rotor's got it on there, but the Christopher Ward people really, it never really bothered me, but it definitely, especially when it was on the dial in its full printed. Although Mike did explain why they had to do that. Can you pull up Zelos Tantalum? Yeah. Oh, the Hammerhead. So, let's see if it's the right one. It's Tantalum Limited Edition. I don't even know about that one, but I guess it's the same idea. They had one that was a skeleton, and it was a pretty neat watch. It had actually a pretty nice movement in it, but it wasn't as direct as that one with a big Z in the front, but right on some barrel or something that you could see, there is just a big Z on it. And I was just like, no. It was the equivalent of the CW for James. It ruined the whole look. And if they left it off, it would have been a much more beautiful watch. Oh, I think it's that one, that Mirage. Oh, no, it wasn't Tourbillon. But, it's I don't like their logo because it looks like either some nefarious, company from an 80s action film, or it's like or like a zombie film or something. It looks like the logo of, some evil dictator in an 80s film. Film. Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I really disliked Zelos when I first saw this brand and like some of the designs, but I've like warmed up to more of the designs as of late because I do admire the fact that they kind of do their own thing. And
I appreciate Zelos so much. I think they make great watches for the price, and they use different materials. So far I can't get over the Z. So maybe I'll get over it, just like I got over the Formex. But right now, I just can't do it. But you're right.
What do you have on your wrist right now?
Zodiac.
What is that? What letter does that start with?
It's Z, but they use the word Zodiac, and their symbol is very benign. And I don't mind their money. And I know it's all personal opinions, but as there it is. It was the Mirage 8-day skeleton.
Go on, yeah. Which one? This one.
So right in your top left. But if you
here.
click on, there should be different varieties. Yeah, and there it is. Just in terms of there's a tantalum one. So, but right in the dead center of it, they've just got this Z, and it's a little off center, so it's a little better. It's a little more hidden. I was very close to taking the plunge because, well, it's one of my favorite metals. But
$4,900 for a Zelos. This is where the value conversation comes in and talking about brands.
Twin barrel 8-day.
I mean, $5,000 for an 8-day. I mean, it's a manual wind, but I mean, skeletonized movement with a tantalum case. I mean, just like yes. Oh, Zelos Z. No. So I know I'm being silly.
No, I don't think you are. Right, the logo puts me off it. There's a lot of people that don't like. I like the one that whenever I review it, there's a lot of people that don't like the logo, but I actually really like the logo, and that is Phoebus, the King Octopus logo.
Oh,
I quite like it. Every one of these that I've viewed, they're the spot. They're going that looks almost like a Crepes, that one, and that's another weird name, isn't it? The old Crepes. So the King Octopus logo on here, I've always liked it.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I mean, do they make things that aren't dive watches? Because it would look pretty silly if you had a dress watch with a big octopus on it. But if they pretty much make dive watches and they've got a diving inspired animal on there, no foul there for me.
Yeah, cool. No worries. All right, guys. Well, that was an awesome bit of a random show, but thanks everyone for joining. Yeah, thanks for joining in. Bit of a. Usually we have a bit of a theme, don't we? But it was a bit of a random one, but it worked out well.
We took ideas from the audience and we ran with it.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, we'll be doing our Sunday social. So yes, we'll obviously see you everyone Sunday. I've got a watch review coming out tomorrow morning, and then I will also do the watch box as well, hopefully by the end of the week. But thanks for watching everyone, and we'll see you next time on Casual Watch Reviews. Thanks.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.